In 1975, a stick of butter sat at the back of the refrigerator like something the family was faintly ashamed of. The tub of margarine sat out on the kitchen table, in the light, approved. Doctors recommended it. School cafeterias bought it by the case. Television commercials showed mothers spreading it across toast. What nobody in that kitchen knew was that the margarine had been built from partially hydrogenated soybean oil, and that in June 2015, the Food and Drug Administration would rule that ingredient unfit for food. So how did the wrong fat reach the table? But this story does not begin in a kitchen. It begins in 1967 in the correspondence of a trade group called the Sugar Research Foundation and in the offices of the Harvard School of Public Health. In 2016, a researcher named Kristen Kearns published a paper in JAMA Internal Medicine describing what she found in boxes of old letters in a Harvard library basement. The sugar trade group had paid Harvard nutritionists roughly $48,000 in modern money to write a literature review. That review, printed in the New England Journal of Medicine, played down sugar and pointed at saturated fat. One of its authors was Mark Hegsted. A decade later, Hegsted served as the scientific advisor to Senator George McGovern's Committee on Dietary Goals for the United States, the 1977 document that taught America to fear butter, eggs, and beef. The report itself was drafted by a Senate aide named Nick Mautern, a journalist with no formal training in nutrition. These are 30 foods your grandparents ate without apology, and what the evidence looks like now. Number 30, tinned sardines. Sardines on buttered bread fed families through the Depression, and then the tin became a punchline. Mercury warnings in the 1990s pushed shoppers toward large fish fillets at the counter instead. But mercury concentrates as it climbs the food chain, and sardines sit near the bottom of that chain. A small, oily fish eaten whole delivers omega-3 fats, vitamin D, and calcium from its soft, edible bones. The cheapest protein in the corner shop turned out to be one of the cleanest things in it. Number 29. Sauerkraut in a stone crock. Refrigeration made fermentation look primitive. A crock of shredded cabbage sweating under a weighted plate belonged to a poorer century. Then in 2021, a Stanford team published a 10-week trial in the journal Cell. 36 adults ate 6 servings of fermented food a day. Their gut microbial diversity climbed, and inflammatory proteins in their blood fell. The high-fiber comparison group, eating the salads and whole grains everyone assumed were superior, showed no such change. Number 28. Boiled cabbage. The smell of cabbage in a tenement stairwell became shorthand for poverty in 100 novels. Nutrition science spent decades ignoring it, then rediscovered the sulfur compounds in the brassica family, the same compounds that make broccoli and kale expensive today. A cabbage costs a fraction of what its trendier cousins cost at the supermarket, and the chemistry inside it isn't far off identical. Number 27. Raw onion and garlic. Every farmhouse kitchen kept a braid of garlic hanging by the stove, and nobody there thought of it as medicine or as food alone. It was both. Modern trials on garlic and blood pressure are modest and mixed, and they don't support the wilder claims. But the older instinct that the sharp things belong in the diet rather than only in the medicine cabinet has survived better than the reputation of many supplements sold in its place. Number 26. Long-cooked porridge. Oats left to simmer on a coal range for 40 minutes come out structurally different from a sachet stirred into a mug at a desk. The intact groat resists digestion. Beta-glucan into the oat thickens the contents of the stomach and slows the arrival of glucose in the blood. The grain was never the problem. The clock was. Number 25. Dried beans and lentils. An enamel bowl of beans soaking overnight on a windowsill was so unremarkable that nobody photographed it. Recent popular books have accused the lectins in pulses of driving inflammation, which would have puzzled every cook who ever soaked and boiled them, since sustained boiling destroys those compounds almost entirely, which is exactly what she'd been doing. Pulses remain among the best-studied foods in cardiovascular research, and the verdict has been steady for 50 years. However, some of these reversals ran deeper than a change in fashion. Number 24. Bone marrow. Roasted marrow bones served with a small spoon were a restaurant delicacy in 1900. Then they became poverty food, and finally nothing at all. Marrow carries fat-soluble vitamins and collagen in a form the body absorbs. The butcher who couldn't give marrow bones away now sells them by weight in the same shops that sell bone broth in cartons. Number 23. Blackstrap molasses. The dark syrup left after sugar refining was spooned into children for generations, then derided as a folk remedy. Molasses is what remains once the sucrose has been stripped away, which is why it carries iron, potassium, magnesium, and calcium that refined white sugar does not. Grandmothers were not treating it as a sweetener. They were treating it as a mineral supplement, and on the chemistry, they were reading the label correctly. Number 22. Dark rye bread. Rye lost to soft, white sliced loaves in every industrial bakery in the Western world. But rye holds more fiber, produces a slower glucose response, and keeps a structure that resists the rapid digestion built into commercial white bread. Northern Europe never abandoned it, and the epidemiology from those countries has been quietly favorable ever since. Number 21. Clabbered milk and cottage cheese. Before the domestic refrigerator, milk that soured on the counter was not thrown away. It was strained, salted, and eaten. That practice produced live lactic acid bacteria in the diet every single week, without anyone paying for a probiotic capsule. Cottage cheese survives as the last commercial descendant of a habit that's now almost gone from farm kitchens. Number 20. Chicken skin and pan drippings. The crackling skin on a roast bird went into the bin sometime in the 1980s, and the fat in the roasting tin went down the sink. Poultry fat is mostly unsaturated, closer in profile to olive oil than to butter. There is a detail everyone missed at the time. The households pouring away chicken fat were often frying instead, with hydrogenated shortening from a tin. Number 19. Beetroot. Pickled beets in a jar on the Sunday table looked like decoration. Beetroot carries one of the richest concentrations of dietary nitrate, which the body converts into nitric oxide, a compound that relaxes blood vessels. Endurance athletes now drink concentrated beet juice before competition. So why did the same chemistry become a warning label on a different food? We will come back to that. Number 18. Coffee. Coffee has been accused of causing ulcers, heart disease, stunted growth, and cancer, in roughly that order, across the 20th century. Each accusation faded and none came back. Large cohort studies now link moderate coffee drinking with lower rates of several chronic conditions, which is not proof of benefit, but is a long way from the warnings printed in health columns 50 years ago. Number 17. Tea. In the 18th century, English physicians blamed tea for nervous disorders and moral decline among the working classes. The panic reads as comic now. Tea carries flavonoids and, in the case of green tea, catechins, and the pot on the hob has outlasted every doctor who wrote against it. Number 16. Nuts. Nuts fell out of favor for one reason only. They are high in fat, and for 30 years, fat was the enemy of the reduced-calorie diet. The bowl of walnuts and the nutcracker on a winter sideboard quietly vanished. But nut consumption is now associated with reduced cardiovascular risk in cohort after cohort, and the walnut never changed. Only the theory around it did. Number 15. Olive oil for cooking. A persistent modern claim holds that olive oil is too fragile for the frying pan and should be reserved for salads. The Mediterranean grandmother frying vegetables in a shallow pool of it didn't get that memo. Testing has repeatedly found that extra virgin olive oil is more stable under domestic heat than its critics expected, largely because of the antioxidant compounds it carries. Number 14. Oysters and shellfish. Shellfish were struck off cardiac diets for decades on the grounds of cholesterol content. Oysters were once so cheap they were sold from barrows in London and New York as working-class food. They carry more zinc per gram than almost anything else in the food supply, along with selenium, copper, and vitamin B12. Number 13. Bacon and cured pork. Cured pork is the most complicated food here, so it deserves an honest hearing. The World Health Organization's Cancer Agency classified processed meat as carcinogenic in 2015, and that classification stands. But the nitrite panic that drove shoppers toward packages labeled uncured deserves scrutiny, because roughly 86% of dietary nitrate exposure comes from vegetables, and uncured bacon is cured with celery powder, which supplies chemically identical nitrite. The label changed, the chemistry did not. Number 12. Bone broth and gelatin. This is the entry where nostalgia runs ahead of the evidence. A stock pot of simmering bones produces gelatin, minerals, and a good deal of comfort, and the clinical case for collagen supplementation stays thin and contested. Your grandmother's stock pot was excellent cooking, not the medicine that wellness marketing now sells. A fair reassessment has to cut in both directions. If this kind of history interests you, subscribe. I go through the origins of one piece of health advice every week. Stepping back for a moment, the largest reversals in this list are not scattered at random. They cluster around a single decade and around a single idea about fat. Number 11. Real sourdough. No bread on this list carries harder evidence. How could a slower loaf of bread be measurably more nutritious than a fast one made from identical flour? Whole grains contain phytate, which binds iron and zinc and carries them out of the body unabsorbed. Long fermentation activates phytase, an enzyme that breaks phytate apart. In isotope tracing studies on whole grain rye, iron absorption from sourdough fermented bread ran roughly 2.8 to 3.5 times higher than from the same bread made without it. The loaf that took 2 days to make delivered nearly 3 times the iron. Number 10. Potatoes cooked and cooled. Cold potato salad at a summer picnic was never health food in anybody's mind. Cooking gelatinizes potato starch, and cooling it causes the amylose chains to recrystallize into resistant starch, which behaves more like fiber than sugar. Chilled potatoes carry roughly 40% more resistant starch than hot ones. The honest caveat is that in the best controlled trial, insulin response dropped while total blood glucose over 3 hours did not shift significantly. Number 9. Salt. The salt cellar on a kitchen table has been treated as a public health hazard for 40 years, but the science underneath that warning is unsettled rather than settled. Analyses from the PURE study, published in The Lancet, found harm only in populations averaging above roughly 5 grams of sodium daily, with a possible increase in risk at the very low end. The American Heart Association disputes that reading, and researchers using 24-hour urine collection report a straight line instead of a curve. Anyone who tells you this argument is finished isn't reading the journals. Number 8. Cod liver oil. In 1922, working with malnourished children in a Vienna clinic after the First World War, Dame Harriet Chick demonstrated that cod liver oil prevented and cured rickets. The daily spoonful became a fixture of British and American childhood, and the disease nearly disappeared. Then the spoon went away. Rickets has been reported in Western hospitals again over the past 2 decades. The bowed legs came back once the spoon disappeared. Number 7. Full-fat cheese. Cheese should raise cholesterol according to the saturated fat model, and in trials it repeatedly does less than the model predicts. Researchers now describe a dairy matrix effect, where the calcium, protein, and fermentation structure of a wheel of cheddar alter how its fat behaves in the body. The disagreement is real and ongoing, but the wedge of farmhouse cheese in the pantry never earned the reputation it received. Number 6. Red meat. This is the second entry where the old advice partly holds. Red meat sits under serious scrutiny, and the epidemiological signal for processed forms is stronger than for unprocessed. What has weakened is the specific charge that led the 1977 report that the saturated fat in a Sunday roast drives heart disease through cholesterol alone. That mechanism has been argued down considerably in the decades since. The food itself remains under active dispute in the epidemiology, but the old certainty about the reason has not survived alongside it. Number 5. Lard and beef dripping. A jar of dripping in the larder was standard equipment before the war, and it was replaced by hydrogenated shortening on the explicit grounds that animal fat was more saturated. The American Heart Association's own 2017 advisory contains the relevant figures. Pork lard is 39% saturated fat. Butter is 63%. Coconut oil, sold today in health food shops, is 82%. The fat that families were told to abandon was the least saturated of the three. Number 4. Liver. Liver on a Thursday was standard in working households, and it is the most nutrient-dense food in the ordinary shop, carrying vitamin B12, copper, retinol, folate, and heme iron at concentrations no vegetable approaches. But that same density is also the limit. Preformed vitamin A accumulates, which is why liver belongs on the table once or twice a week rather than daily, and why pregnancy guidance treats it with caution. Grandmothers served it weekly, not nightly, which is precisely the right frequency. Number 3. Whole milk. Children were moved onto reduced fat milk to prevent obesity. A meta-analysis in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition pooled 14 studies and nearly 21,000 children and found that those drinking whole milk had lower odds of being overweight or obese, with an odds ratio of 0.61. The authors were careful since the studies were observational and parents of heavier children may simply buy skimmed milk, but the policy has never had a trial supporting it. Number 2. EGS. In 1968, the American Heart Association advised the public to eat no more than 3 egg yolks per week and to keep dietary cholesterol below 300 milligrams a day. A single large yolk contains 184 milligrams, which put the humble breakfast egg on a restricted list for 2 full generations. In 2015, the Advisory Committee for the Dietary Guidelines for Americans concluded that cholesterol was not a nutrient of concern for overconsumption, and the limit was removed. The argument continues at the margins. The blanket restriction is gone. Number 1. Butter. Which brings us back to the tub on the kitchen table. Between 1968 and 1973, researchers ran the Minnesota coronary experiment across 6 state mental hospitals and a nursing home in Minnesota, enrolling 9,423 people. Half had their saturated fat replaced with corn oil and corn oil margarine. Serum cholesterol in that group fell by an average of 31 milligrams per deciliter. Deaths did not fall. Among participants over 65, every 30 milligram drop in cholesterol was associated with a 22% higher chance of dying. The full survival data sat unpublished for more than 4 decades, recovered eventually from magnetic tapes and paper records in a basement, and printed by the British Medical Journal in April 2016. The researchers who recovered that data were careful about what it did and did not show, and that caution is worth borrowing. It does not prove that corn oil is dangerous, and it does not crown butter. What it shows is that a substitution presented to the public as settled was, at the time it was recommended, still an open question with unpublished evidence sitting against it. That stick of butter at the back of the refrigerator was never contraband. It was a food that had fed people for 4,000 years, waiting out a theory. Some of these 30 vindications are firm. The trans fat swap was an error, the egg restriction has been withdrawn, and the sourdough loaf really does give up its iron, but others are still moving. Salt is an argument, not a conclusion, and the stock pot is cooking rather than medicine. What links them is not that our grandparents possessed secret knowledge. They did not. They simply hadn't been told to stop yet, which leaves the harder question, and it is not about butter at all. If a single funded literature review in 1967 could reshape what 100 million kitchens looked like by 1985, what are we being told with the same confidence right now?